There is a quiet form of control most people never notice. It does not come from force or authority or even intelligence. It comes from access. Whoever has access to your emotional state has influence over your decisions, your focus, and eventually your life direction. If someone can trigger anger in you, they can distract you. If someone can trigger fear in you, they can limit you. If someone can trigger approval-seeking in you, they can shape your identity. And yet most people walk through life handing out that access freely, reacting instantly to insults, opinions, rumors, delays, and failures as if every external event deserves full authority over their internal world. Stoic philosophy begins with a radical interruption of this pattern. It draws a line so clear it is almost uncomfortable. Not everything that happens to you deserves a response from you. In fact, most things don't. The moment you fail to recognize this, your mind becomes a battlefield where everyone outside of you is a participant in your inner state. You are no longer the observer of your life. You become the reaction to it. The ancient Stoics understood something modern life constantly tries to erase. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there is a space. In that space, your entire existence is shaped, not by the event itself, but by the judgment you attach to it. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself in the middle of political chaos and personal pressure that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not caused by the thing itself, but by your estimate of it. That single insight dismantles most of what people call emotional suffering. Because the truth is, no one controls your emotions directly. They only present the trigger. You complete the reaction. And what completes the reaction is not them, but you. The implication is severe. It means that every time you say someone made you angry, you are surrendering authorship of your mind. You are admitting that your internal world is outsourced. Stoicism refuses this surrender. It returns ownership back to the individual, not as comfort, but as responsibility. If your emotions can be controlled from the outside, then your life is unstable by design. If they are governed from within, then even chaos becomes manageable. But understanding this intellectually is not enough. The real challenge begins when life applies pressure, when someone insults you in public, when your plans collapse, when silence is misunderstood as weakness, when effort goes unnoticed. In those moments, your instincts rise like trained responses, demanding immediate expression. Retaliate, defend, explain, prove, react. Stoicism interrupts that instinct and asks a sharper question. Will this reaction improve your character or weaken it? This is where the dichotomy of control becomes more than philosophy. It becomes survival logic. Some things are within your control, your judgments, your intentions, your actions. Everything else, reputation, outcomes, other people's opinions, timing, external success, exists outside that boundary. The average mind constantly confuses these categories, treating external events as if they were internal responsibilities. This confusion is the root of emotional instability. Consider how often frustration comes from misassigned ownership. You are late because of traffic, and suddenly your entire emotional state collapses as if traffic were a personal attack. Someone misunderstands your words, and now you feel compelled to correct their perception, as if their internal interpretation were your responsibility. A plan fails, and instead of adjusting strategy, you internalize failure as identity. Stoicism cuts through this by forcing separation. The traffic is not yours. The misunderstanding is not yours. The outcome is not yours. What remains is yours alone. How you choose to interpret it, and what you choose to do next. This is not emotional suppression. It is emotional precision, but there is another layer that most people overlook. Even when they understand control intellectually, they remain vulnerable to invisible forms of emotional manipulation. Not because others are powerful, but because attention is undisciplined. Every notification, every opinion, every reaction from others becomes a lever. And if your attention is constantly outward-facing, Your emotional state becomes a reflection of the environment. This is why strategic silence has always been a Stoic discipline. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as protection. When you speak less about your plans, you reduce external interference. When you react less to criticism, you reduce its authority. When you stop broadcasting your internal state, you begin to stabilize it. Silence is not emptiness. It is containment. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but consistently returned to inward discipline, reminding himself that the opinions of others are not worth disturbing the mind over. Epictetus, who was once a slave, built his entire philosophy around the idea that freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the absence of internal dependence on external approval. Seneca, surrounded by political volatility and eventual exile, repeatedly warned that a mind dependent on external validation is never truly its own. What connects them is not detachment from life, but detachment from dependency. And dependency is the real enemy here. Not people, not events, not criticism. Dependency. The moment your emotional state depends on external confirmation, you are no longer stable. You are negotiable. This is why immunity to criticism is not arrogance, but architecture. It is the construction of a mind that does not collapse when judged. Most people misunderstand criticism because they assume it carries inherent truth or authority. Stoicism reframes it entirely. Criticism is not information about your value. It is information about someone else's perspective. Sometimes it contains useful data. Often it does not. But in neither case does it define you unless you assign it that power. The disciplined mind asks a different question. When criticized, does this help me improve my actions? Or is it simply noise attempting to enter my attention? If it helps, it is used. If it does not, it is discarded. No emotional escalation required. No identity disturbance necessary. But perhaps the most misunderstood Stoic principle is transformation of obstacles. People assume resilience means enduring hardship. Stoicism goes further. It demands conversion. Every obstacle becomes raw material. Every setback becomes feedback. Every form of resistance becomes training. This is not optimistic thinking. It is structural thinking. If life blocks your path, the Stoic does not interpret this as rejection. He interprets it as redirection of effort. If someone undermines your progress, the Stoic does not internalize resentment. He extracts information. If something fails repeatedly, the Stoic does not escalate emotional investment. He escalates understanding. This is amor fati in practice. Not loving what is easy, but accepting that what is difficult is already part of the material you must work with. Reality is not obligated to match your preferences, but your response can always be shaped into something stronger than your original expectation. And here is where most people misjudge Stoicism entirely. They think it creates emotional numbness. In reality, it creates emotional independence. The difference is critical. Numbness reduces feeling. Independence removes captivity. A Stoic does not feel less. He feels without being controlled by what he feels. Think of anger as an example. The immediate impulse of anger is not the problem. The problem is obedience to it. A Stoic notices anger the way a skilled driver notices a slippery road. Not as a command, but as information. The road does not decide the destination. The driver does. This is what emotional mastery actually looks like. Not suppression, but governance. And governance requires distance. Not physical distance, but psychological distance. The ability to observe your own reactions without merging with them. Most people are inside their emotions. Stoicism teaches you to stand beside them, to see them arise, peak, and dissolve without losing control of the observing mind. That ability is what separates reaction from response. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and externally triggered. A response is deliberate, filtered through judgment, and aligned with long-term intent. One belongs to instinct, the other belongs to character, and character is the only domain that Stoicism insists is truly yours. Everything else will shift. People will misunderstand you. Circumstances will disrupt you. Plans will collapse. Praise will fade. Criticism will fluctuate. But character remains the one stable structure, because it is built from choices, not conditions. If you internalize this deeply, something fundamental changes. You stop negotiating with reality emotionally. You start working with it strategically. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this requiring of me?" That shift alone removes a significant portion of suffering, not because life becomes easier, but because interpretation becomes clearer, and clarity is what emotion seeks when it is no longer in control. The Stoic does not aim to eliminate emotional life. He aims to relocate authority. Emotions are no longer commanders. They are signals, useful, sometimes intense, but never sovereign. The sovereign remains the rational, disciplined self that decides what deserves action and what deserves silence. Because in the end, the greatest form of freedom is not the ability to express every feeling instantly. It is the ability to withhold reaction until wisdom has spoken, and most people will never experience that freedom, not because it is unreachable, but because it requires one unbearable discipline, refusing to let the outside world vote on the state of your mind. When you master that, you stop being controlled without realizing it. You stop being pulled into unnecessary conflicts. You stop leaking attention into things that do not matter. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your life begins to stabilize, not because the world becomes calm, but because you do. And that is where real Stoic power begins. Asterisk. Most people misunderstand emotional control because they imagine it as suppression, as if the goal is to become unaffected, untouched, almost mechanical. But the Stoic does not aim to remove emotion. He aims to remove domination. There is a profound difference between the two, and confusing them is why many people fail at self-mastery before they even begin. Suppression is fragile. It builds pressure. It eventually breaks. Control, in the Stoic sense, is not pressure management, but attention management. It is the ability to see an emotional wave forming and refuse to let it become a governing force over your actions. You still feel it, but you no longer obey it blindly. That single distinction is where most people either remain reactive for life or begin the long process of inner sovereignty. And sovereignty is the real subject here. Not motivation, not discipline in the shallow sense, but ownership of the internal world regardless of external pressure. To understand this, consider how emotional control is usually lost. It is rarely lost in dramatic moments. It is lost in small, repeated concessions. A comment that irritates you, so you respond immediately. A delay that frustrates you, so you complain. A criticism that stings, so you defend yourself excessively. Each moment seems minor, but each one is a vote. A vote that says, external events have authority over my internal state. Over time, those votes accumulate. And eventually, your emotional world becomes a democracy ruled by the loudest trigger. Stoicism is the reversal of that system. It replaces democracy with disciplined leadership. Not tyranny over emotion, but structure above it. The emotional system is acknowledged, respected, but not allowed to govern. Marcus Aurelius faced pressure most people cannot even conceptualize. Military threats, political betrayal, personal loss, constant demands on attention and decision-making. Yet his reflections reveal a consistent internal posture. Observe first, react last, and only act when judgment has stabilized. Not because he lacked feeling, but because he refused to let feeling dictate form. That is the key difference between wisdom and impulse. Impulse reacts to intensity. Wisdom reacts to meaning, and meaning is never obvious in the moment. It is constructed after distance is created. which is why Stoicism constantly returns to one principle. Do not act immediately when emotionally activated. Not because action is wrong, but because premature action is almost always distorted action. Think about how many regrets are born not from what people felt, but from what they did while feeling it too intensely. Words spoken in anger, decisions made in insecurity, opportunities rejected out of fear, relationships damaged by reaction rather than reflection. None of these come from emotion itself. They come from lack of space between emotion and action. That space is where Stoic training lives, but building that space requires something most people avoid: discomfort with non-reaction. Because when you do not immediately respond, you feel tension. The mind demands closure. The ego demands expression. Silence feels like weakness. Stillness feels like surrender. Yet in reality, that discomfort is the exact threshold where control is built. If you cannot sit with an emotional impulse without acting on it, you are not in control of your life. You are negotiating with it in real time. This is why strategic silence is not just social discipline. It is psychological training. When you choose not to respond instantly, you are not avoiding conflict. You are refusing to let emotional urgency dictate timing. You are proving to yourself that you are not governed by external stimulation, and that proof is internal, not external. No one sees it. No one rewards it. But your mind registers it clearly. Over time, it begins to trust your restraint more than your impulse. That trust is the foundation of discipline. But Stoicism does not stop at restraint. It moves further into reinterpretation. Because control without interpretation is incomplete. You can stop reacting externally and still remain internally disturbed if your mind continues to assign catastrophic meaning to events. This is where most people remain stuck. They believe emotional control is about what they do, but ignore what they believe about what happens. If someone disrespects you and you do not react, but internally you spiral into resentment, you have not achieved Stoic mastery. You have only suppressed expression. The disturbance remains. Stoicism demands something deeper: cognitive independence from immediate interpretation. You are not required to accept the first meaning your mind generates. In fact, the Stoics would argue that the first interpretation is almost always biased by survival instincts, ego protection, or fear. Someone ignores you. The first interpretation may be rejection, but that is not fact. That is narrative. Someone criticizes you. The first interpretation may be attack, but that is not fact. That is perception filtered through ego sensitivity. Between event and interpretation, there is again that space. And in that space lies freedom. A disciplined mind uses that space to ask, what else could this mean? What is actually confirmed and what is assumed? What is useful to do next, independent of emotional coloring? This is not self-deception. It is precision thinking under pressure, because emotional instability is rarely caused by reality. It is caused by rushed storytelling about reality. Now consider immunity to criticism again, but at a deeper level than before. Most people think the goal is to not care what others think. That is incomplete. The actual Stoic position is more precise. You care about accuracy, not approval. Approval is unstable. It shifts with trends, moods, and social context. Accuracy is stable. It is grounded in reality, evidence, and rational evaluation. When you anchor your identity to approval, you become externally regulated. When you anchor it to accuracy, you become internally regulated. This changes how criticism functions entirely. Instead of threatening identity, it becomes data. Some of it is noise. Some of it is distortion. Occasionally, some of it is correction. But none of it is identity defining unless you allow it to be. This is why Epictetus emphasized repeatedly that no one can harm you unless they control your judgments, because judgments are where meaning is assigned. And meaning is where emotional response is born. If judgment is disciplined, emotion becomes disciplined indirectly. But here is where Stoicism becomes uncomfortable for most people. It does not promise emotional comfort. It demands emotional honesty combined with restraint. That means you do not deny anger. You do not deny frustration. You do not deny fear. You see them clearly, without mythologizing them into commands. A man who is afraid but acts wisely is stronger than a man who pretends he is not afraid. A man who is angry but does not act destructively is more disciplined than a man who claims to feel nothing. Stoicism is not the absence of internal conflict. It is mastery over internal conflict. And mastery is not static. It is practiced repeatedly in small decisions, in choosing not to respond immediately, in refusing to escalate emotionally, in redirecting attention back to what is actually within control, in returning to action rather than rumination. Over time, this practice builds something subtle but powerful: emotional distance from chaos, not emotional detachment from life, but detachment from instability. And once that distance is built, something interesting happens. Events that used to shake you begin to feel smaller, not because they changed, but because your internal structure changed relative to them. The same external pressure now meets a more stable internal frame. That is real resilience. Not hardened emotion, but stabilized perspective. And from that stability, discipline becomes easier. Because discipline is not just willpower, it is clarity about what matters long-term versus what feels urgent short-term. Without emotional control, urgency always wins. With emotional control, direction wins. This is why Stoicism and self-discipline are inseparable. One governs reaction, the other governs action. Together they create consistency, and consistency is what actually changes a life. Not insight alone, not motivation alone, but repeated alignment between intention and behavior, regardless of emotional fluctuation. Most people underestimate this because they chase intensity. They want breakthroughs, realizations, emotional peaks of clarity. But Stoicism is not built on peaks. It is built on repetition in ordinary moments when nothing feels significant. Not reacting when you are slightly irritated. Not spiraling when something mildly disappoints you. Not over-identifying with temporary emotion. These are not dramatic moments, but they are decisive ones, because they determine whether you are being shaped by your environment or shaping your response to it. And here is the final reversal Stoicism offers. Most people believe freedom is getting what they want externally. Stoicism teaches that freedom is not needing external conditions to stabilize internally. If your peace depends on everything going well, you are fragile by definition. If your peace depends on your interpretation and discipline, you are stable by design. That is the real transformation. Not control over the world, but control over dependence on the world. And once that dependence weakens, something unexpected emerges: clarity. You see people more accurately. You see situations more clearly. You act with less emotional distortion. You stop wasting energy on unnecessary reactions. You begin to move with intention rather than compulsion. At that point, emotional control is no longer a technique. It becomes your default state. Not because life stopped provoking you, but because you stopped surrendering authority every time it did. And when that shift becomes permanent, you are no longer reacting to life as it unfolds. You are participating in it from a centered position that cannot be easily displaced. That is the Stoic aim. Not to escape life, but to stop being internally dragged by it, and very few people ever reach that point. Not because it is hidden, but because it requires a level of consistency most people are unwilling to maintain, when nothing is forcing them to. So the question is not whether you understand this. It is whether you can live it when there is no reward, no recognition, and no immediate consequence for failing to do so.